and so he didn't take the bait on any of that stuff. He just kind of took that in, and then he just said, okay, well, he said, I was interesting because I was recently he had done that however many week or how many episode version of the Old Testament where he had the panel. And he said, yeah, one of the one of the stories in the Old Testament was Jonah. And so I thought after I listened to his explanation from, his psychological perspective, I know there's other more Christian or I don't know however you'd want to call it, religious, more of an interpretation, but so he, says, okay, Jonah, he goes, yeah. And, Mara was like, oh yeah, the one, yeah, I know that story with the big fish and he swallows the guy, but yeah. And he laughed off and he goes, yeah, he says, it's real interesting. He said, because, here's Jonah, here's Jonah. And he suddenly got the word from God. I want you to go to Nineveh and I want you to speak to the people. And he said, Peterson said something like, and being in kind of probably a normal, sane person, he said, no way, but because I guess them in Nineveh weren't necessarily, it wasn't his town. It wasn't really the town. He's like, yeah, no way, bud. I ain't doing that. I'm out of here, right? So he goes and gets on the boat. And so, but, he was there to speak the word, to speak the logos to the people, right? Which is the truth, talk about God, right? So he's on the boat and suddenly they come into a storm, the boat's rocking, and the sailors are like, somebody's on here that's not quite right. And then he confesses, yeah, it's me, and then the whole gets thrown over, swallowed by the fish. And they joke, Mara joked about that and talked about how, yeah, there was some religious person talking to him one time. And he said, well, the Bible never says fish. I mean, it never says whale. It's just fish. And he says, yeah, boy, he really got me on that point. That's he's the kind of level that he's at with reading the stories, So anyway, so the point was, he goes, yeah, well, he said, what I get out of this story is I see someone who was given some truth to speak, and he didn't speak it. He ran from it. And by running from it, he basically put this whole ship in jeopardy because he was afraid to speak the truth when he needed to. So I thought that kind of dovetailed into the speaking, the truth last week. And then when he finally realized, I guess was in the belly of the creature, he said basically that represents hell, because you're in the depth, in the belly of a monster anyway. And he says, I realized I made a mistake, whatever. So then he, goes back, and then he goes to Nineveh and speaks the truth and to them, and, kind of happy as the story goes. I think it doesn't quite end that way a little bit later, but
yeah, he gets all mad that
they didn't go into that part. But, yeah. But the speaking of the truth, he was given, this word by God to speak the truth. And so we were talking last week about speaking. I don't know if we really talked about speaking the truth in that manner, in a way that, more from my perspective, what I remember we talked about was more like when you're talking with people or you have a relationship with people or when you speak the truth. But in this sense, he was trying to say that in life there are times when you need to speak. There's truth to be spoken, and it may not be easy to do, right? Go to some place that you don't want to go to, and maybe and if you don't do it though, you can put, you don't want to say you're going to put other people in jeopardy, but
yeah, but you're creating a big storm,
yes,
of some kind.
Yeah. So
yeah,
so that's my curveball for today. When I heard that, I'm going, man, that really was good because that fit into last week, and
there's truth to speak, and it needs to be spoken. If you don't speak it, it makes a mess of things.
The only contradictory thing to that is that I hear a lot of people speaking a lot of stuff that doesn't sound like truth these days. So I think they think it's the truth, but anyway.
Well, and that is, I do think it kind of fits in, or as like a precursor to this, like this lesson is sort of about listening. So you got to let people speak their truth and sort of start to think for themselves. But if you think you know it all, right, then you're not going to listen. And what if they have that truth from God that's for you? Nineveh listened, right?
So maybe it was not a curveball. Maybe it was just a segue.
Yeah,
from last week to this.
I think it works. I personally, as you were telling the story, it did kind of resonate in the sense that there are true things to tell, and sometimes it eats me up when I can't. You know, so like I feel like I need to say this thing, and you don't say it, and it does. It may not get you into a storm or the belly of a whale or the literal depths, but it can get you into the depths. It can mess with you pretty big time. Sometimes, though, it's not knowing exactly what to say because you have all these people shouting, right? People standing up for truth. And they are. And see, that's part of the problem is that I do think there are times, and I remember this at the time in like 2020. I think I did a devotion for the district, a video one, and it was about sort of the Trinity. And here we have God, 3 persons, 1 God. How is this logical inconsistency? How does it hold? How are these mutually exclusive things all true at the same time? And I was like, if that's at the heart of the universe, well, then the people that are shouting Trump or Biden back in 2020, or masks or no masks, or, you know, the deadliest virus in the world and nothing more than the flu, or, you know, George Floyd, America, racist place, and hey, no, we're the best there is. And I think there's truth. There was and is truth in every single one of those statements. All of those sides to the issues. Everybody had some piece of it. But I think what he kind of gets at in here is this ability to listen helps you sort of distill more of the truth. You do have some truth, but do you have every piece of the truth? No.
Yeah, I heard it explained like, so if you look at this bottle of water, well, what is this? It's a bottle of water. Well, that's true. But it's also, you know, a piece of plastic. And it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that's true. Then it's also molecules of chemicals. Well, that's also true. And then it's, you know, atomic structure that makes up the molecules. And, you know, it's like there's all these other things that are the truth, but when it comes down to it, it's a bottle of water. So what is the truth? You know, is it all the truth? We don't know all the truth, you know, because you keep going, and you don't have to go down that way, but you could go in other directions. This is a recyclable. What are you doing? I'm drinking a recyclable. You know, it's like, yeah.
Well, and another thing is, like, if you hold it up one way, it has the shape of a rectangle. You turn it, now it's a circle, but it's really both. It's this cylinder, essentially, right?
Right.
So, there's so many sides to things, and, you know, if we think that we've got it all figured out, that is a pretty dangerous place to be. In fact, there was a quote, I think it was also in the chapter, or something like it, but in the video too, he said, do you want to be right or do you want to be learning? You know, he said this thing where the most important thing is not what you know, it's what you don't know. And it's not only what you don't know, it's what you don't know you don't know.
Right.
And so if you don't shut up long enough to know that you don't know something and that there is an answer to what you don't know, you're stuck. But then he also said, do you want to be the tyrannical king that has it all figured out? Like, I know I'm the boss. You're going to do it exactly the way I say it because I'm the king and I got it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about listening being a transformative exercise. People think by talking. All of that stuff is so important for us, and we can't really do it until we shut up. You know, there's 1,000 things that get at this, 2 ears, 1 mouth. God's trying to tell you something, right? So shut up and listen. I tend to be pretty bad at this because I'm talking all the time.
Well, later on, he did talk about like different forms of conversation, and I don't know if I got the same, names that he had, but this is the way I understood them. There was like maybe the first one is kind of more of a debate, right? You're saying something, and then I'm kind of hearing what you're saying, but I'm already thinking about what my response is to be because I'm trying to win the argument. I'm not really trying to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, I guess what he focused on a lot was problem solving as another form of discussion. And then the last one that I got out of it, or at least one of the later ones anyway, the last one I wrote down was just kind of like a bonding kind of thing. I don't know, where people just have conversations and they tell stories and
they're just listening, and it's the
sharing.
more you reveal to each other about each other and thoughts, the tighter the bond. And, it's not really so much about learning other than learning about a person. Right?
Yeah. Like I said, what he called that type, I'm not really sure, but yeah, that's what I wrote down because that's what it made me think of when I was listening to it.
It's not thinking per se. It's a relationship development kind of thing.
Right. But like you were just talking about the problem solving part of it, that was one of the things he said don't do is, which I learned a few years ago, or I guess maybe one of these, some training class I had or whatever, try to, listen, and then you try to repeat back what the person said to make sure you're understanding, or at least in some agreement that you're talking about the same thing. And then, you're actually trying to listen to learn something from somebody, like you said. You don't know everything, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listening is hard. And he kind of, when you'd first mentioned to me earlier this week or late last week, maybe about, I'm trying to get through this chapter. It's like, ooh. And I got into it and I was like, it is kind of weird because he explains the importance of listening by explaining how important it is to talk. Right? Is that sort of why it sort of throws you for a loop?
Yeah, I really didn't. Yeah, I didn't really know where he was going with this, at first, the first half of the chapter. So, that it kind of came together later on when he started getting more into the explanations of, listen to learn. You can learn something, from somebody told me years ago, you can learn something from anyone, or you can learn something from any job you do. It's like, your goal in life may not be to be, whatever this job is that you might quite kind of think might be below you, but, you're starting out somewhere. But when you're doing that job, you can learn something from it, so.
Yeah. I've learned lots of things from lots of people, including people that I really disliked, and even people that I think we could say wasn't even just that I disliked them. It was like they were bad. Like they were really bad about a lot of things, and yet they will learn something. And sometimes
they were really bad. No.
Well, no. Like
they actually had some.
They actually have a positive to contribute It's just, sometimes it's hard because the bad is so glaring and outweighs a lot of the good. But, you still take those good things with you, little nuggets that I've learned. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it's true, it's true. If it's good, it's good, right? So just use it. Maybe that's me at my New Yorker pragmatism or whatever, but I think we would all do well to learn from that. And it's not just like, oh, yeah, I learned you're a disgusting pig. Which is what most people turn it into. But no, we got to listen. Well, we got to talk, right? And I know this about myself even. Like I've said, I gotta talk sometimes because I don't even know what I think yet or what's right. And I kind of do that naturally where I'm talking out loud. And so because of that, sometimes I say things and people are like, which he talks about, like people sort of recoil like, and now that's stupid.
Right.
I do that even with things I kind of know are stupid, but you're just sort of venting a little bit. You're just throwing it out there and you're just putting out all your own emotion about it also. And so you just say stuff and not always helpful. You got to do that in the right spaces. But
Right.
I've known myself to be sort of, I say, a verbal processor. Some people prefer not to do that. But I think he makes the case that actually probably we all kind of do it by talking to a degree. And what better way to allow people to learn about themselves, learn about the world, right? He explains it as like thinking is a way to create an avatar of yourself and put that avatar, that fake person, like a video game character or a person on a game board, and you put that person out into this experimental reality and you can sort of think through what would happen if that being took certain steps or actions or, said things or whatever. And when you think, it's a way to do it without actually dying. It's a way to do it without actually blowing up your life. It's a way to do it without actually hurting someone else's feelings. It's a way of doing it without, ruining your business or losing your job. It's like you practice in your head, you think about it, and the ones that are stupid, those ideas, they can die. But in order, the best way to do that is to talk, and you have to be able to verbalize it out loud and allow somebody else to sort of poke at it. Because sometimes you don't know that it's a dumb idea. He gives an idea of a kid going to climb up on a roof, like, hey, let's climb on the roof. And the big sister's like, no, what if you fall? What if this, what if that? So talking about it allows other people to provide input because, I think we've all either said this, thought this, heard it, that sounded a lot better in my head. Because, and before you know it, like you're doing something, you're like, maybe I should have asked somebody's opinion first.
And it never sounds good when the idea starts with hold my beer.
Yeah, hold my beer. Nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that. So he actually, there's a part where he actually says that the crowd is usually right, which seems counterintuitive because people are stupid. They just really are stupid.
Well, that concept came about, or at least in my arena, maybe 10 years ago or so. Maybe it's been a little longer, but when they started doing, these things like crowdsourcing, right? They throw these ideas out, and basically, if you get people to get on board with it, you get all the feedback from all these different areas. Yeah, well, one person may have a tidbit of a good idea to add to that, and you get 1,000, little tidbits, and it helps the whole process. And a lot of probably what 1% of it. The rest of it goes by the, or whatever it is goes by the wayside. But yeah, so yeah, I can definitely see how that works. Because in that crowd you probably have a statistical group of people across the crowd that can give you a good response, and then other people go, yeah, they're kind of like, oh yeah, I can get on with that. So I don't know, but
of course, the truth isn't always so straightforward, right?
Right.
So he also says sometimes the crowd needs to hear the truth.
Right.
Right. Well, that's Nineveh.
Right.
So the whole crowd thinks it's okay to kill people and treat people like garbage. Nineveh was pretty bad. I don't remember all the details, but I listened to a series of sermons on that at one point, and this guy went into some detail about what was going on in Nineveh, and one of the, some of the reasons why Israel and the Jewish people, had such a hard time with them, and why Jonah would have wanted to run. And they needed to hear something different. They were not correct. That's repentance, right? And so you need to listen for transformation yourself, to hear what you don't know. But you also need that input from the outside for transformation too. And so a conversation becomes this really amazing, beautiful, wonderful, essential part of life. And there is really like a crisis, I would say. There's a crisis of friendship, just relationship. People just don't have that really anymore. Very hard to find it. Certainly it's hard for people to say what needs to be said, but it's also hard for people to hear what needs to be heard, and how quickly we break apart our relationships over things that we heard that we didn't like to hear, we didn't want to hear. And then you've got our political landscape, and it's literally just almost all people talking over each other. No one's actually listening. And I think part of that has to do with just the nature of politics and the mediums that we have for communicating with mass numbers of people. It doesn't really lend itself to extensive dialogue and back and forth. It's all sound bites. It's really about power in the end. So they're trying to get power. How do you get power? Well, you convince people. How do you convince people? Well, you don't do it by having a dialogue. You don't do it as well with a dialogue. I mean, it would be the kind that transforms people more deeply and more permanently. But if you have like a short-term goal, like, hey, there's an election in 20-something days, little sound bites are best for that, And you're also trying to keep people from hearing the truth about you, right? And so you just have this.
It's insane.
Yeah,
I'm ready for it to be over with.
Really bad. But I think most people, if you listen to them, their concerns are valid, and they probably aren't either kind of crazy. They just want to be heard. They feel like they're not heard, and that's why they are where they are. I think if we did that more, we would all understand each other better, and we'd all have more of these moderating positions, understanding all kinds of reasons why things can't always be this way or always be that way. They're not always black and white.
Yeah, so...
Oh, sorry.
The thing, something that he brought up about listening was about how men listen to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd heard that before, and I get guilty as soon as, when I learned that, I'm like, yeah, I do that. I mean, not that women can't do that too, but I guess it's more men tend to do that. And he said, women have a tendency they formulate the solution by discussing and questioning. So they're like talking it out, like you're saying, it sounded like, is what he, was describing, So I thought that was interesting because, and it made me think, because I heard the men's side of the story, but I'd never really heard the women, or if I did, I wasn't listening. So it did. I heard the men part go, "Oh yeah, that's me," and then they talked and whatever. But anyway, so this time I heard it, and it made me think back to just recently, right? Janet and I are in the car, and we're going to the mall or to the store or someplace. Anyway, we're in the car, we're driving, and we're talking, and I don't even remember what the discussion was, or yes, I'll say discussion for. Anyway, so I had some idea. Like I said, don't even remember what it is now. So, probably zero importance, right, in the scheme of things. But I thought about something. I just said it, and it was really not a conversation, right? I was just saying, this is what I think, and this is what it is, and this is what I think the solution is, and that was it. That was basically, I just wanted to say it. And she started questioning me on it, like, I was like, wait, don't question me about this.
Listen here, woman.
I thought about all this already, and this is the right answer. It was basically kind of like my response, and I was like, so when I heard him talking about this, I was going, oh, so she's formulating her answer by, like, the female, according to him, women formulate there by discussing, asking questions, and they formulate their response or their solution by doing that. So I made a statement, which I had already thought was the solution to whatever it was. Like I said, can't even remember. And then she started questioning me on it. It's like, I don't need to be questioned. I've already thought about this. This is the answer. But she was doing the dialogue from her, she was using her technique to question, to try to formulate the answer to see if that idea that I had worked. And I was like, oh, okay.
And you were trying to help her solve a problem, or you?
I was just, like I said, I don't even know what the topic was. It could have been political, could have been sports related. It could have been just about anything. Whatever, you drive into someplace and something, you're just talking. And so I said this. And I was like, oh, so that's probably what was going on there, right? I thought through all the facts that I thought I knew, had my solution, and I just blurted all that out. And then she was trying to use her technique, more of the female technique, to question. I took the question as like, oh, she's just questioning all my ideas. Why don't you just agree with me? She said, and she actually said, what, do you just want me to agree with you? I'm like, well, no, that's not really what I want, but well, but anyway, I guess the whole point of my thing is to say that there was two people, a male and a female, and we were using our two methods of thinking things through or coming up with a solution to a problem, because he talks about discussion as a problem solving. Mm-hmm. And here we were doing it, and, I was completely oblivious to it. And whether she realized she was doing that, I don't know, but, I know a lot of, it just, okay. So now I'll have to be more aware of that. All that to say that, you big knucklehead. Yeah. No, but I mean, so I don't know. I'm sure you've never done that. So
Never once in my life. No, I think part of why we jump to the solution is we want to be a hero. Like, we want to be the hero for our wives. We want to just have a solution. We want to fix it for them. It's actually probably far more emotional than we think, or anybody really. Women are just like, oh, you're just so cold and whatever. But yeah, no, we need to fix it for you because we want to help you and we want to be your hero, sort of, right?
Yeah, I think you might have mentioned something like that.
But
I mean, I didn't think like I was trying to be, because I don't think it was her problem. It was just a problem of some sort.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
But he starts out with this like really bizarre story about this client of his for counseling, right? This woman who comes in and is like, I think I've been raped. So rape, and then 5 times, right? And so he's like, what? How you think you've been raped 5 times? So these 3 big whoppers, like right out of the gates. And he goes on this whole big explanation of really just saying what people think of, like when they think of therapy, they're thinking like, oh, I'm going to get advice. But really, although there are people that do that, they aren't really helping you. They're shaping you and molding you into their own image, sort of their own preconceived notions about a variety of things, and they're not really helping you. And so the real way to help people is to listen, and primarily because it lets them figure it out. Right? So if you spoon feed it to them and you tell them this is the solution, then they're not really going to get the solution. It's not going to be theirs. They're not going to own it. They're not going to be able to, it's not going to take the same way as if you draw it out of them slowly by allowing them to say it, think through it, talk it out, poke holes in it. You can do all that kind of stuff. So really, the female versus the male way is much more effective, especially for men, because what do they always say about us? Like, well, he'll do it if it's his idea, sort of, right? And that's true, but that's really everybody. It's just more us than it is them, maybe sometimes, as far as.
I don't know, like, how those thought processes really go male or female, but I do definitely align with the, wanting to come to a solution. I mean, that's kind of what I do for work, right? Someone has an issue or they want to do something, and I ask questions then because you're gathering facts, right? Oh, so what do you do? How do you do this? Well, you pull all those together. Well, we can do it this way, this certain way, and that's fine, and it works, and you listen, but it's a different thing, I guess, when you're, I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, definitely, definitely asking questions is, and discussing things, you get to at least however many people we have in the discussion, you can have perspectives, from those different perspectives. So,
well, and you got to talk and you got to have these conversations because, he tells us, use this example of a super saturated solution, where like you can sort of trick a fluid into holding more sugar than it's supposed to if you heat it up and then cool it. So like, let's say you put a bunch in and a lot of it falls to the bottom. That means you got too much in there. But if you heat it up and you stir it, it'll absorb more. And you can heat it up and add more and stir more, and it'll hold more and more and more and more. And then you can cool it down, and now it's back to a normal temperature, but somehow you got 3 times the amount of sugar that you would have had if you'd have just kept it at that temperature. And then he says, like, if you drop 1 piece of sugar, it all crystallizes, like it all just, right, and kind of collapses if you just add that one little. And I kind of wonder, what the heck is he talking about? What does this have to do with anything? But sometimes you just need that outside person, and as soon as you say it out loud, or as soon as they just give you like an obvious response, or even sometimes like a confused, like, why is this even a thing? Like, don't even worry about this. And then all of a sudden everything crystallizes and it's fine. Like I was just did something like that today, sitting down with a bunch of staff and saying, hey, so, Christmas is coming and I got to think about, because we live far away and from family and all that kind of stuff. What are we going to do? And it just, I'm trying to be helpful here, and I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. And I've been doing this now for at least a month, going back and forth on things with my wife, and then with Lisa, and now today finally with other people. We got everybody in a room, and I'm just like, oh, so I can just do whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah. okay. But see, if I'd have never gone out there and put it out there and asked, and
You would have formulated
I'd have
possibly
keep
a
trying to
complex,
come up with some sort of solution, and it was totally unnecessary.
you'd have formulated some kind of complex plan to solve a problem that didn't exist.
Yeah. Well, because last year we were down a staff person, and we were trying to come up with ways to support everybody through kind of a transition, tricky transition, and but we don't have that. And the way the calendar is fallen, everybody's going to be fine. I just gotta go. Just leave. Just go. It's fine. It'll be fine. I was like, wow, it feels good to be that crystal clear about something. And it doesn't always work quite that easily, but
sometimes after you've put so much thought into it and they do that, you're thinking suddenly there's this vacuum. Like
what do I, wait a second.
Wait a minute. What do I do now?
Well, that's his point with
whatever you want.
He could have come at that client with one viewpoint. He could have come at it with another viewpoint. And he's like, there are psychologists, therapists that will do that. And they sort of like, I forget, I think I even highlighted some of that. She left therapy with me only somewhat less ill-informed and vague than when she first met me. She left therapy with me only somewhat less ill-informed and vague than when she first met me, but at least she didn't leave as the living embodiment of my damned ideology, which is what a lot of people do, right? So he goes through this whole big explanation. He just says, I decided instead to listen. That's sort of how it starts out, and then he ends up there.
Instead of trying to make a bunch of robots that all think the way you think, because you already think you got it figured out, right? So here, if you just do it the way I say, you're fine.
Yeah, and
the way I do it.
You were talking about your conversation with your wife, and you just want me to agree with you? Like, no, actually, that's the Stepford wives. That's they take the part out of their brain that makes them question things or resist whatever, and now they're just, yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear. But that's not really a relationship, right? And what the heck do we need each other for? Why are we all here if we're not all supposed to be somewhat different and thinking for ourselves? So
I've already made women mad by some of the things I've said. So, but it was
tonight you're talking about. I didn't think it was anything that offensive. But,
okay, good. I never know these days.
I mean, anybody can get offended. But yeah, men and women are definitely different, generally speaking. That doesn't mean that everybody fits into a nice little box. That
right.
But there are some pretty strong general patterns. Right.
Right. I guess my whole point of that example was that I was bringing to our conversation my toolkit of what I do. She was bringing her toolkit of how she handles things, and it was like it wasn't working because I didn't realize. I thought I didn't realize that may be just the way that she processes things, right?
Mm.
I thought she was just poking me or whatever. I don't know what I thought. It was like, why you gotta ask me all these questions? But anyway.
Well, sometimes people are doing that. Sometimes they are.
I do that.
Maybe. Just to get a rise out of people.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
She might have been doing that, but it did, I don't know, it just made me think that. But yeah. So that was interesting.
Yeah, but this is true thinking, complex and demanding. It requires you to be an articulate speaker and careful, judicious listener at the same time. It involves conflict, so you have to tolerate conflict. Conflict involves negotiation and compromise, so you have to learn to give and take and to modify your premises and adjust your thoughts, even your perceptions of the world. Sometimes it results in the defeat and elimination of one or more internal avatar. They don't like to be defeated or eliminated either. They're hard to build. They're valuable. They're alive. They like to stay alive. They'll fight to stay alive. You better listen to them. If you don't, they'll go underground and turn into devils and torture you. In consequence, thinking is emotionally painful as well as physiologically demanding, more so than anything else, except not thinking. Right? So the only thing more emotionally painful and physiologically demanding than killing an avatar, killing an idea, is not thinking, right? So that becomes worse because you didn't think and now you did something and now you're experiencing all this pain. But we have these ideas sometimes that don't want to die. And that's why we got to talk about them, and we got to let other people kill them for us or give us the ammunition to kill those ideas, to say, that was so stupid, or hopefully not that directly, right? Because we can't always handle that. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And now all of a sudden, yeah, I guess you're right. That's pretty dumb. Now, I will say that there is also, sometimes, what tall poppy syndrome is?
No.
I keep meaning to look this up again, but I swear at some point there is this story about these poppy plants, like poppy whatever things that grow, and maybe like in Australia or Asia or somewhere, I don't know. But every once in a while you get one that's above the rest, and they go around and they cut to keep them level, to make them all beautiful or something like that. I don't know. It could be like a made-up sermon illustration. Like somebody just thought this would sound good and they turned it. And so I'm not remembering all the details. I don't know if it's entirely accurate, but the concept, I think, makes total sense. Is this idea that sometimes when people rise up, humans are very quick to just chop them down and keep them just like everybody else. They don't really want people thinking big ideas or getting ahead of themselves, getting ahead of everybody else, doing too well. And so I think there is a word of caution here that just because people are killing your ideas doesn't mean it's a bad idea. Sometimes people are just stupid and spiteful and unoriginal and lack courage. So in that sense, I would just say, like, if you have like a big idea and you want to bring that out and you're bringing it to people and people are kicking it around and poking holes in everything, make it better. You find people that help you believe, or that believe in you enough to say, yeah, this is a good idea, but here's some ways to think about it. People that don't want to kill that joy or that dream or whatever. People that are actually going to help you, right? So the person you're talking to, the people you talk to, does sort of matter. So just, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that somebody who doesn't have an axe to grind, right, that have the avatar that they don't want to let die themselves, right? Like he talked about the different psychologists in the beginning, that they've got their way of viewing the world and they're going to impose it on their client and give out, quote, advice instead of letting the client sort of think for themselves. And those are not people that you want to be helping you think. You don't want to let them help you think. It's find people that have a legitimate, that legitimately want you to do well and succeed. And, that you'd be surprised how hard that is to find, that the way people sometimes react.
That was from an earlier chapter or two, right?
Maybe. Which one are you thinking?
I don't remember which chapter it was, but it was, that's that very kind of statement, right? You want to find people that will celebrate your success and not
make friends with people who want the best for you.
There you go.
See? He already had it covered. I didn't need to go into all that. But again, see how they all kind of work together. They do really. It's sort of very scriptural in that sense, like Scripture in the sense that from a Lutheran approach to the Bible is like you don't just take a verse and go, here it is. Bow and submit to this verse and what it says. It's, oh, here's a verse. What's the context? Let's read the verses before and behind. Just like now, like people all over the place, politics-wise, right? Oh, here's what this person said. Well, why don't you go a minute before and a minute after? And most of the time you do that, and you're like, you're a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, the whole thing dissolves.
So context, but then also Scripture interprets Scripture. So if you're not sure how a Scripture should be interpreted, just remember the rest of Scripture and use that to be the filter, right? So here is like you're getting these rules. You got to listen, right? But keep in mind the other rules too. It all sort of fits together. Speaking of Scripture, and we've probably got to wrap this up so we got to hit the road. We're going on tour. Taking it on the road.
We'll be in the Gulf Coast later this evening.
Yeah, that's right. We're already in the Gulf Coast, but there's a passage from James here. Know this, my beloved brothers, James 1:19, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Listen, right? Not listening, not slowing down, not thinking can lead us down paths that can get out of control really fast. So just kind of a little nugget of wisdom there. Shut up. So, any final thoughts?
Yeah, the only thing that other thing that I had was that he talked about visiting, which is what I think kind of what you're just saying, visiting with old friends. You know, you can just have these conversations, and you know, and with guys, I mean, you get them together, and you know, you can talk about different things. You could say just about whatever you want to say. And if you say something stupid, they let you know immediately, but you know, they're coming at you know, they're your friend. They're coming at you. They're not trying to harm you necessarily. So, yeah.
Guys can be pretty brutal. So be careful. But yes.
So, yeah, I think that's similar to what you were kind of in the line with what you were just saying. But, yeah, I thought that was really, true too. I have that experience.
They keep you humble, for sure. They remind you of all your screw-ups, past screw-ups and stupid stuff you've said. And
all the dumb things you did when you were younger. They know them all, and you know.
At some point, everybody said, hold my beer, and regretted it. Or effectively the same thing, even if it wasn't literally hold my beer.
Yeah.
So, all right, y'all. Well, hey, hope you've enjoyed this encouragement to listen. And let me get it word for word here again. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't. You can't possibly know everything. The person in front of you has some little nugget of wisdom. God put them there for that. And so just zip the lips. Open up those ears. Let them give it to you. Let them give the gift that God has for you in there. So don't forget about our publications here. Open Arms, Connecting People to Jesus. I have a podcast on Tuesday with my co-author there. We've got the Tales of Nola, Nola's Icelandic Adventure. We're actually going to a Christmas bazaar to try and sell some of these in a couple weeks.
How bizarre.
How bizarre. And then Nobody's Nola, the first in the series. Working on number 3, slow but sure. Getting there. All right, y'all. Great to catch up with you. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is far sweeter. Later.